living word of God. We're so grateful and so thank you for the cable company for allowing us to be able to bring this program to you. First class business, love the things that they're doing with the program. And so we're just so excited to be able to bring this program to you week in and week out. It's something that we don't take for granted. As a matter of fact, we thank the Lord every day for the privilege and honor that it is to be able to do this and bring it out. Last week, we started a series of talking about making love work, the importance of love and marriage, and just kind of dissecting, different thoughts, and going off what the Bible has to say about marriage, and just practical thoughts and suggestions and things that we wanted to bring to you, and just kind of get your thoughts on and that kind of thing. I am not a love expert. I don't never claim to be a love expert. I've been married my wife and I have been together for over 40 some years, and even after 40 some years, we're still learning. We're still pursuing and getting to know. And if I didn't say this last week, I want to say it today. We're going to talk about this more on our podcast, Real Talk podcast, coming up. There's no such thing as a perfect marriage. Perfect marriages don't exist. Last year's what you did last year, you still have to do more things this year. More in the sense of where love is a choice. You choose to love, you choose to forgive in the good and bad times. Relationships overall as a whole is just tough being in relationship with people because of all of the dynamics that go along with that. But like I said last week also marriage is God's idea. Yeah, I truly believe outside of the salvation through Jesus, it was one of God's greatest ideas. And what Satan wants to do, he wants to water that down. He wants to make it seems like or appear to be that marriage is a bad idea. It's not a good thing, and that is unnecessary, right? But I want to tell you, for those that are truly experiencing making love work as it pertains to following the Lord and what God has to say about how we ought to love, honor, and treat one another, I'll tell you what is probably one of the best decisions that you'll ever make in your life. So last week we left off on talking about once you decided, okay, this person is the one. This is the person that I'm looking to say, okay, I think I want to marry this person, right? And I asked the question, even I was joking, but I was serious. Should you have an interviewing process with the person that you're going to get married to? Well, nobody's going to say, well, hey, look, okay, I decided that we should get married, but also before we get married, we're going to sit down and we're going to have an interview. I want to interview you, and I want you to interview me just to see if this is the best thing for us, right? Even though you don't call it that, I most definitely feel like in some form that you should do that, because I feel like so many times we go into this thing blind, right? And only to come to find out, it's like, man, I didn't know that you thought like that, or I didn't know that you act that way when this happens, right? I see so many, and I've been a part of so many marriages and weddings that I performed over the years of young people. They come in, they look so excited, and they're, the wedding is beautiful. The wedding venue is a marvelous place. They're looking good, and all the preparation that goes into putting on this expensive wedding, only to come to find out a year, maybe two, that all of what that day was about, that marriage is over with. All because, and I heard a guy say, he said, you know what, the real marriage is not, the real marriage doesn't, he said, the real marriage starts when the wedding is over with. That's when you start, you go in and really start putting this thing into practice, or you find out real quickly, you know what, I wasn't ready. I heard Deion Sanders say on TV the other day, he said he was divorced twice. And he said he said for both of his weddings, for both of his marriages that he ended up getting divorced, he said when he was walking down the aisle, he said he knew he was doing the wrong thing. And so many of you out there too, you feel like the same way. It's like for whatever reason, you just don't, hey, I probably shouldn't do this, or for whatever reason you're still doing it. But I want to take you back through that interviewing process, and you can trash this if you want to, but it helped me. Questions that you should probably ask before you make the commitment of putting that ring on someone's finger and that kind of thing. So for the believer, as a matter of fact, let's go in the Word. Genesis 2:24 was our foundation scripture, and it says, therefore, a man shall leave his father and his mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. I love that. Therefore, the man shall leave his father and his mother, and shall come to leave his father and his mother, and be joined together with his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Like I said last week, in the eyes of God, when couples get married, he says when the two become one. God doesn't see husband over here, wife over here. When you're married, he sees you as one, right? And that's the oneness in marriage that comes along through knowing the Lord. That's the thing the oneness is the thing that Satan hates the most, as I said last week. And the reason why he hates it, because that oneness, he can never get that back with God again, right? And so therefore, that's what I believe one of the main reasons why he hates marriages and families so much, because he can never be a part of a family anymore. He can never be a part of a family anymore. And so when it comes to marriage, focusing on marriage, when it comes to marriage, it's like, you know what? Marriage reflects love. Marriage reflects oneness. It reflects a communion, a relationship with the Lord, right? So let's go over this. The interviewing process, before we get to that, you ought to ask yourself this thought. It says, intimacy in a marriage is not just experienced through sex. It's being together, caring for each other. It's late night whispering in the room, telling each other how much you love, value each other. It's talking about how you grew up. It talk about all those things it talks about the matters of your heart. It's talking through the matters of your heart. It's praying together, right? It's going places together. It's building memories. The intimacy in marriage is amazing. It is what connects two very different people, bringing them together so close that they become one. Marriage is more than just raising kids, paying bills, sharing a house together. Marriage is also about friendship. And the only real way to build a good friendship is by spending time together, finding things to do together, common interests, hobbies that you both enjoy. And I love this. I love this. It all goes back to the Genesis 2:24, where it says, therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother, and the two shall become one flesh. Okay, the interviewing process. Like I said, if you're going to pursue to get a job, especially a high-paying job, they are not going to just let you fill out the application and say, oh, based off the application, that person's a good fit, bring them in, we're going to give them that job. They're not going to do that. 9 times out of 10, they're going to bring you in, they're going to sit you down, and they're going to ask you a series of questions about your character, about your experience, about things that have happened in jobs that you've had in your past. And then out of that, and maybe some more questions, but out of that, they're going to sit down and they're going to determine whether you are a good candidate or a good fit for their company or this job. And that's very important, because you want to make sure you get the right fit or the right person in your job, in that job or in that role, because it can really enhance or advance your company, versus when you bring the wrong people in. I mean, it can really set your culture back, your company back. Y'all, if that's true in a job sense, how much more is that true in marriage? How much more does that have to be true when you're making the decision of someone that you want to spend the quote unquote rest of your life with, right? Marriage should never be taken lightly. Entering into marriage should never be taken lightly, because the joy of getting this thing right, I mean, will outlive you, right? I shared last week the story of a couple that had been married for 70 years, right? And the thing that I noticed most about that, it's the way after 70 plus years of marriage, the way they still talked about each other, the way they still looked at each other and adored each other. Man, if I live that long, and and my wife and I, if we live that long, I want that to be our testimony. Hey, 70 plus years of marriage, and we can still look at each other with the eyes of love, with a heart of compassion and desire for each other. And it's like nowadays you just don't see a lot of that. I shared this also last week. I was talking to a group of younger people, and they was telling me that the culture today, they don't view marriage like that. Marriage is not essential to them. It's not important. And they said, I said, well, why is that? The group was saying they're real simple. He said people are too selfish to be married nowadays. He said if you are always about yourself, he said, just look at social media. All the things that you see on social media, it's hard for you to make a commitment to a love commitment to someone in the good and the bad. You promise to be this, and that. He said nowadays, he said people just don't go there. But let's go over the interviewing process. If you choose to want to go there, I think there's some things that at least you should that at least you should consider. Like I said last week, you can. People will lie to you. They'll say whatever they think you want to hear to look impressive or to impress you. But I believe for the believer, if you're following the Lord will let you know what's real and what's not. So the first thing we said is, if you plan on getting married, these are things that you must talk about with the person that you plan on marrying. The very first thing is the main thing, is that, do you have a relationship with Jesus? If you are a believer, a Christian, and you want to engage or be married to someone, the requirement from the Bible that person that you get married to has to be another believer, has to be walking with the Lord too. And like we said last week, the Bible says, what fellowship does light have with darkness, right? What communion does God have with the devil? There is none. And light and darkness can't walk together. And so when you marry, and many people, and I see this all the time with Christians, they marry somebody that's not a believer, and only to come and find out that they're headed down the road for major problems. And when they get into those problems, the first thing they say is that I'm not happy, or things are not working out. Can you pray for me that God will fix? God is not going to fix that marriage, because God told you from the very beginning, he says, do not be unequally yoked together with unbelievers, right? Because a believer should do what believers do. A unbeliever is going to do what unbelievers do, right? I don't blame the unbeliever for not wanting to come to God when you told them from the very beginning, I am not a believer, right? I blame the believer, because the believer is supposed to be the one to know better. If God say don't go there, there's reasons why he says don't go there. There will never be a oneness, the God type of oneness, with a non-believer and a believer when they come together in a marriage. It can't be. Number two, what's your view on love and marriage? We said this last week. It says, what's your view on love and marriage? You would be surprised at their thought pattern on love and marriage. Hey, if the way I was raised, this is what I saw marriage to be. The way she was raised, maybe this is what she thought the way marriage should be. I think it's important to talk through those things. I think we got this part. We said, are you a temperament? What's your temperament? What I mean by that, are you a yeller? Some people are yellers. When they get upset or they get bothered by things, they yell, right? Are you a cusser? Are you, I should have said last week and I didn't. Are you verbally abusive, right? Are you loud? When you're arguing and things don't go your way, do you know how to be mature when it comes to disagreements, right? Some people, if you want to find out who a person really is, all you got to do sometimes is watch them when they get bad. Watch them when they get upset, when things don't go their way. What comes out of them, right? Right? Or when you're in that relationship, or you're pursuing that relationship, and you see those things, you got to ask yourself, can I handle, or do I want to put up with somebody that always goes off flipping out every time things don't go their way, right? And it's male and female both. So I asked last week, I said, okay, What about a homebody versus a partier? And that doesn't have to be a deal breaker, but I do believe that's something that that should be talked about because the partier, and don't get me wrong, I believe I believe in fun, I believe in going having fun and doing things that bring joy to your life. But I'm talking about hanging out where you're partying all night, you're out there, in the clubs doing whatever it is they do in the club, and you got one that goes and do that all the time, the other one doesn't do that at all. I think there has to be a conversation that said, babe, and I told my wife, I said, I'm the type, I am a homebody. I find my greatest joy after maybe working all week, coming home, relaxing, chilling. That's me. But I know that's not everybody. So that's one of those ones that you really have to have a conversation to where, hey, I'm not the type to be chasing a woman up and down club after club after club in the wee hours of the morning, just trying to make her happy and do all that. And I'm saying about me personally, if you're looking for that type of man in me, you'll never have it because that's not who I am, right? And we'll talk more about that later. Then you ask the question, okay, in the interviewing process, okay, have you ever been divorced and why? People say, well, of course, you can't lie about being divorced. Yes, I've been divorced. Well, why were you divorced? Do you feel comfortable enough to share with me why you've been divorced? And sometime in this one, this is where most people would probably lie when they explain the why they got a divorce. Most of the time, they'll say, well, it was the other person's fault. The other person didn't treat me right. The other person didn't do whatever it is they didn't do. And so therefore we had a divorce versus being transparent and honest. For some, hey, I wasn't mature enough to be in that relationship at the time. And I'm a firm believer, just because one marriage failed don't mean that you're going to fail every time you get married. And if you were to get married again, I'm not saying that your next marriage is going to fail, but what I am saying here, and this is what I share in the counseling session, you have to be honest with yourself as to your part in your divorce, right? If you had a part in your divorce, and I get it, and I understand some people they've been hell to live with, and I get that. But sometimes the more real you are, but when I say you, I say us, the more real we are about ourselves, the more that we can look in the mirror and see and understand exactly what's looking back at us, the better we'll be able to answer this one. Hey, I have some issues that I need to work out as it pertains to getting married and being in a relationship. I got some stuff that I know I need to fix about myself, or I need to let God help me. Maybe I'm just saying anger, for example. Maybe it's my temper. Maybe it's the way that I respond when things don't go my way. I might cuss and yell and throw things. And for some, I see hitters, both male and female, both. I need God to help me with that, right? But here's when you have to be honest with yourself as to why your last marriages broke up, right? Or why your last marriages failed. Then you ask yourself the question, okay, do you want kids? You say, well, Pastor King, why is it important to talk about this one? You would be surprised at how many couples that they go into a marriage not having this conversation. And this is what I mean by that. Do you know some people, they don't want kids? And there's nothing, and if that's your choice, if that's what you choose, that's what you want to do. And I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with that. But what I am saying is I don't want to marry a woman and in her mind, she never wants to have kids. And in my mind, I'm thinking, hey, I want to have a lot of kids, right? But if you never have that conversation and you get married, and then all of a sudden it comes up and you say, well, hey, one saying, hey, I want to have kids. The other one is saying, I never want to have kids. Can you see the problem that would cause? Or I even do you one better. What if you can't have kids, right? And some people, for whatever reason, you can't have kids, but you conceal that and you don't share that, right? And it's like, even though if for those that can't have kids and want to have them, I understand the pain, and I understand the pain of wanting kids and not being able to have them. I've watched people in my family go through that. But if you can't have kids, or I can't have kids, if I want to get married to somebody, don't you think it's important to share that? Well, many people say, well, I'm not going to share that because that'll be a deal breaker. For some people, if you can't have kids, then they wouldn't want to be with me, or they would leave. You know what? I'd rather go into that telling the truth versus getting down the road and say, "Oh, I've been knowing about this from the very beginning, but I just chose not to share that with you." What are your thoughts? Oh, I love this. What are your thoughts on in-laws, right? We talked about this in our group too. You know what? The Bible says, therefore, a man shall leave his father and his mother and be joined together with his wife. And I see so many, you'd be surprised. I see so many couples because they can't get along, like for the daughter-in-laws, for example. If you one of those watching this, I hope this will help you. For the daughter-in-laws that can't get along with the mother-in-laws for whatever reason, right? I was sharing this story how I knew this guy where his wife and his mom constantly bickered toward each other for whatever. I mean, they found things to beef with each other about, and the son, the husband and the son, he felt so trapped because he loved his mother and he loved his wife. And it's like, okay, he could see the wrong in his mom and he could also see the wrong in his wife. And neither one of them loved him enough to see what was going on in his heart to squash their beef, to do what they could to try to get along even for his sake, to try to get along with each other, right? Y'all, there are times where you have to have an understanding. There has to be boundaries. I'm not saying that I don't want to be married to a woman that when her and I get married, she wants me to cut my family completely off, because I'm not going to do that. But I also have to understand my family is like, okay, I'll just use this hypothetical. Maybe this is for somebody that's watching the program. If it's just me and you come and you borrow some money from me and I say, okay, hey, here it is, take the money, man. This is between me and you, right? That's one thing. But now that I'm married and you come to borrow money, I just can't give you. It would be, to me, it would be inappropriate to just give you money, even if I had it, even if it wasn't a burden for me to give it to you. I'm married now. Certain decisions should be made together versus me. I'm not a single person anymore. I should. To me, it would be disrespectful to just do those things without consulting your husband or your wife. You see what I mean with that? But just talk. Some couples, even in the interviewing process, they'll tell you, hey, when it comes to my family, I'm gonna do what I want to do, and nobody's going to tell me what I can and can't do as it pertains to my family. But that's where you have to talk about those things, because the reality is, when it says the husband and the wife shall become one, and therefore, like I said before, in the eyes of God, it's not the husband and the wife, it's the one. So walking through the family issues can be very, very important, right? Next one. Hopefully you're getting something out of this. What's your thoughts on paying bills? Huge one. What's your thought? See, when you're getting married to somebody, sometimes I won't ask you to say pull a credit report, but sometimes you got to know. You would be surprised at, hey, some people believe in paying bills after the shutoff notice is there. Some people don't believe in paying bills at all. Some people believe in, they're not structured or disciplined or have a plan for their finances, right? And I'm just being honest with you, when it comes to finances, if you don't have this conversation and truly have a good understanding of how these things are supposed to go, it could cause major problems in your relationship, right? I'm a firm believer that, look, when it comes to paying bills, your integrity, now I'm talking as a believer, when your integrity, you can't just ignore bills. You just can't ignore doing certain things. And then it's using wisdom with your money, with your finances. I had to learn this in the early days of our marriage. I was the wrong person to have the checkbook because I was young, I was immature, and all I wanted to do was buy all the toys first, right? But my goal was I was going to buy toys first, whatever that toy, whether it was a car or game system, fill in the blank. I was going to do the toy thing first, and I'll worry about the bills later on. Well, once the toy money is gone and the bills come due, look at the problem that it caused. Eviction notices, right? Repossession. I'm just being honest with you. when you have the strain, when you have financial trouble, when you can't seem to get right when it comes to with money, y'all, it puts a strain on your relationship. So even going into this, you got to ask, hey, what's your thought on paying bills? How do you feel? What's your take on paying things on time? What's your take on saving? All of that is things that you have to talk to because it will affect the whole family. And then this is a huge one. What's your thoughts on working? You would be surprised at how some people they feel like, hey, I have plans to do whatever this here or that there, but somebody got to work because we got to eat, right? We got to have a roof over our head. We got to have our money to do the things that we need to do. And you would be surprised at how couples they don't talk about this. They when it comes to working, you could be a wife that wants to stay at home, right? Or you can be a husband that don't want your wife to stay at home. But if you don't communicate those things, if you don't talk through those things, can you see how that can create major problems later on down the road? And then you just got to know each other. What is wrong with investing time in getting to know each other so you can find out each other's love language, the things that what's your trigger points, right? And people I've seen young couples, they rush in and they know very little about the person that they're about to get married to. They have this fantasy that the marriage is going to be like the beautiful wedding that it was, only to come to discover that the person that they showed off in front of all those people they can't stand right now. Y'all, it's deeper. There's so much more to be shared on this. And tune over to our podcast. We're going to share more about the do's and don'ts of marriage builders and marriage destroyers on there. But I'm Pastor Edward King. Hopefully this has been a blessing to you. Our job is to encourage you in the Lord, of God's way on this thing. But until next week, remember, we walk by faith, not by sight. Thank you. God bless you.